What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on for Mike here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCSL here exclusively on College Football Revamp. And we are here in what has been quite the season that we have been able to witness so far, as we're only a couple weeks into year number 2, and we have seen quite a few upsets already unfold right before our eyes. It has been really entertaining to see how this season turns out, and we got a lot going on in this particular episode here today. Like, we go down to Gainesville, for example, for College Game Day. We got multiple top 25 matchups, most notably UCLA taking on Washington in Seattle, so that will be a fun game to watch as well. Also have many other nationally televised games that we will be looking into, as well as checking on studio updates throughout the country. So gonna be a fun episode. It is going to be an absolutely action-packed episode as well, so I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. And without further ado, I'll see you guys on the field for today's NCSL, going into week number 3 of this second season of this dynasty. Let's go get it. So we'll get week number 3 action started with some early game content. We come out here, first game of week number 3. We got number 23 Mississippi State taking on the Auburn Tigers, and it's going to be really interesting to see which Auburn team ends up showing up in the first place. You know, Auburn, they're capable of being the best in the country, but then losing a head shaker to San Jose State just in the last episode alone. So we'll see what happens here, as Mississippi State does end up taking that early lead here in the first quarter, as Jeremy Baldwin throws a touchdown strike to give Mississippi State a 7-3 lead. As Auburn drops back the pass, looks over to the right-hand side, finds Bo Cantrell, and Bo Cantrell is going to pick up the first down for the Auburn Tigers. So we'll see what Derek Alexander follows up with. It's going to be a pitch out to the right-hand side, almost breaking a tackle there. They actually count that as a pass, and that pass is completed for a 6-yard gain. But they keep it in the air yet again. Alexander with a dime to the left-hand side, as Ty Jacobs, with his first career touchdown reception, gives Auburn the lead briefly, but Mississippi State, they do fire back. Could be in for a little bit of a shootout here early in this episode, because both teams are performing pretty well on the offensive side of the ball. But we'll see if it's kept up for the rest of the game, as Alexander drops back. 3rd and 5, and gets it to Bo Cantrell on the slant pattern. Auburn will take the lead. Later on in the second quarter, Auburn continues the offensive striking, as Roy Gross is going to run the ball into the end zone. Gives it a 24-13 lead. But then Mississippi State does answer back with 4 minutes left to play in the first half, as John Huff cuts it down to just 5 points for the Bulldogs. But they do go for the extra point. They actually miss the extra point. That could be an issue later with how tight this game has actually been. But, you know, still close game either way. 8-point game, as Baldwin goes to the right-hand side, finds Allen Wright for a 15-yard gain, and very fortunate that Allen Wright did go out of bounds, because, you know, he was going to break that tackle. So a little bit of a bullet dodge, as Mississippi State does have the chance to tie this game before we go into the locker room, but not sure if there was a miscommunication or just a bad throw, but not sure what he was trying to accomplish there, but that's not it though. So 20 seconds left in the first half. They have a chance to probably run the rest of the clock out if they want to do that, but hang on now, things could get spicy here, as Roy Gross with nearly 20 yards of running, and they use their timeout. So could get very interesting here in the final moments of the first half. His very next play takes it deep downfield, breaks the tackle, and he's going to score with 4 seconds left. Leroy Mark is going to score for the Auburn Tigers, and they put up a 30-piece before we go into the halftime locker room. And Auburn simply does not stop in this game. This was an all-time performance for the Auburn offense. A chance to make this close to 30 points lead. And this is a type of play where you just know that everything is going your way right now. Roy Gross should have been dropped in the backfield. That's what should have happened. That's not what happened at all, though. And sure enough, Auburn is going to extend this lead even more. And yeah, Auburn, they are going to run away. They are going to destroy the hopes and dreams of Mississippi State as the Tigers win 57-19. So we got more action coming your way, as this actually was your game day episode. Miami, number 8 in the country, coming off a loss to Georgia. They are taking on the Florida Gators, who get to 2-0 after most recently a win against Southern Florida. So this is the type of game where we're going to find out, is Florida really back? Are they actually a legitimate contender in the SEC this season? Or, you know, have they gone to 2-0 courtesy of their soft schedule? Is it more because of that? Well, this game is going to provide us some answers and a lot more, as Miami is going to score first here in the second quarter. Casey Carter does make it a 7-0 lead. And then later in the second quarter, Carter again running it out on the perimeter. Should have been dropped for a loss, but now he's in the open field. Breaks it over tackle and is going to score. Touchdown Hurricanes. And Miami up 14-0. As Carter drops back the pass, looks over to the left-hand side, and is going to score again. Miami with a 21-0 lead. And this is even with Miami. They honestly had some putrid kicking in this game, in spite of it being just such a clear day for the Florida Gators. So Miami up 21-0. In spite of all that, they are really taking it to Florida. And guys, if you listen really closely in the background, you could hear a squirrel fart in the swamp, because that is how much that they have really taken this crowd out of the game early and often. And Miami takes down the Florida Gators 35-13. Florida got a couple of garbage time scores, but they were definitely dominated. So we get our first try box of the game, as we have multiple games going out throughout the country. Most notably, UCLA is taking on the Huskies of Washington. But first, we will check in on another Pac-12 team, the California Bears. They will be hosting North Carolina State here in week number 3. But it's not Cal that's looking to score first. It is actually the Wolfpack. They're looking to get the first points on the board, and they will succeed in doing just that, as Blake Fountain is going to keep it himself on the read option. And they'll have a 7-0 lead for now, as we'll see California is still looking for its first points of the game. But we got an injury on the field for Tim Thomas. Hopefully it is not too serious of an injury, but California, in spite of that, they will still find the end zone. Lamar Cox does step up and finds the end zone for the California Bears. But now here we are, less than 3 minutes left in the first half, as Cal is looking to finish this first half strong, as they'll look over the middle to find Lamar Cox yet again. He's been feeling pretty cocky about his performance. Already 7 catches in this game. He has been a solid target for this California quarterback. And speaking of which, touchdown! And who does it? Lamar Cox. He is not messing around and finding out, because Lamar Cox, he comes up and makes a big time grab. And from that point out, California starts to pull away, particularly in that second half, and California gets the job done. They win 34-14 as they're getting closer to start conference play. Meanwhile, Marshall is looking to get to a 3-0 start against the Eastern Carolina Pirates. Eastern Carolina did lose last week on the road to Arizona, but I'm sure they are more than happy to be back in the confines of their own stadium. But, you know, they're going to need to bring their A game if they want to come out here and beat this Marshall team. A Marshall team that could possibly be considered to be ranked in the top 25 if they do win here. Marshall looking for their first 3-0 start in this series. But Eastern Carolina trying to put a stop to it, as midway through the first quarter, Caleb Peterson, well, he'll run into the end zone for the Pirates. and they'll draw the first blood in this game. However, later in the first quarter, Marshall does not take a lot of time to respond as Marshall goes and moves up and down the field. CJ Charles is going to run the ball into the end zone for the Thundering Herd. Allows them to tie the game for a little bit, but Eastern Carolina, after that field goal, they will pull back ahead yet again. But in the last 2 minutes of the first half, though, Marshall dropping back, looking over to the left-hand side. Nice job on the deep curl pattern there for Robbie Harrison, who gets his very first catch of the day. Good time in doing so as they're trying to execute this 2-minute offense pretty well. And it looks like Marshall, they are on the same page right now. Trey Heath able to get open over the middle of the field. That gets them into roughly field goal range. Might be on the edge of effective field goal range. Marshall kicker is not the best kicker that we have seen, to say the least, but goal line situation for the Thundering Herd. This will give him a chance to take the lead, and look at this open man on the outside. That was all Trey Heath on that drive. He had 3 catches on that drive, which is a great security blanket for Rufus Adams. And now we'll see if Eastern Carolina can respond with a minute left to play in this first half. They're going to throw over the middle of the field, find a receiver. It's Chris Scales, the running back out of the backfield. And they're already at around the midfield logo, but they do end up taking a penalty, though. As they'll throw over to the right-hand side. It's intercepted a couple plays later. Now Marshall can extend the lead even further, as Bo Wallace did throw that pass late. And now it's Marshall looking to extend the lead. Adams throws to the left-hand side, but he doesn't get the ball up enough. He had the right idea. He did throw the ball to an open receiver. There just need to be a little bit more air under that pass. Because there wasn't, it gets picked off instead. And now Eastern Carolina looking to take the lead. That's a big-time throw down the sideline to Ryan Gutierrez for a 47-yard reception. And the Pirates with 1 timeout left, going to their no huddle, facing some pressure, and it's fumbled. It is fumbled, and Marshall is going to recover the ball. Oh no. So that's how the first half is going to end. Eastern Carolina is still down by 3, and the mistakes still keep happening. And the crazy thing is, even with all the turnovers, the Pirates are still in this game because Marshall hasn't taken full advantage, but we might see Marshall start to really pull away here in the second half. Eastern Carolina is going to have a lot of work to do if they want to get back and win this game. But the field goal will make it problematic, though, as Marshall up by 13 with 5 minutes left. Eastern Carolina got to roll with touchdowns and touchdowns only from here on out. But Bo Wallace trying to answer the call, but he takes a sack. He takes a sack. Time is not on his side already. They do get back into the red zone eventually, but 3rd and long, though. Wallace all day to throw, finds a receiver, but Adam Holmes does not pick up the first down. And they got to go for it at this point. We'll see what they cook up with a 4th and inches. Looking over the middle, and not only is it a first down, it's a touchdown for the Pirates. And Marshall cannot run the clock out, so Eastern Carolina, they got a chance to win the game down the sideline. Touchdown, Ryan Holman. And the Pirates take the lead yet again. And Marshall, they try to set up the field goal, but I told you, that kicker for Marshall, he was not very good. He was put in possession to win the game and leaves it well short. And Eastern Carolina, with a strong 4th quarter comeback, wins 31-30 to get their first win of the year. So we'll see if some of these other games around the country can live up to what we just saw in terms of exciting finishes. I just felt my heart rate go up a notch or two, and I didn't even play the game. But listen, we got some other great games coming up. How about a top 10 matchup out here in the West Coast? Number 3 UCLA taking on number 6 Washington, 2 teams that were participants in the college football playoff last year. This could be a game that could decide some conference supremacy early in the season. This is by large the best conference in the entire country, you guys. This conference is absolutely insane in terms of the amount of talent that is out here on the West Coast, right? But UCLA, they are going to start the first quarter off extremely strong. They're already going to be up 14-0 as the fullback of all people, he's going to get involved in the offense. He's going to score for UCLA. Brian Daniels just doing a beautiful job executing the offense, and he already has 2 touchdown passes here in that first quarter of action. But now we get into the rest of the game as Washington tries to answer back. Really need to score here, and they will. Jason Smith, he's going to answer the call for the Washington Huskies. They really needed that because this could have been one of those games where UCLA really could have ran away with it. But it looks like that is not happening, at least not right now, as UCLA running the ball down the sideline, across the 50, down to the 30. Is going to finally be chopped down at the 25-yard line, but a heck of a run there by Brent Childress. He gets his biggest run of the entire day and eventually sets up this red zone opportunity where Kobe Green is going to dive for the ball, is going to catch it. Touchdown UCLA, and Brian Daniels, this UCLA quarterback, well, he still hasn't, he has completed every single pass so far in this game. We'll see how long he keeps that up. We have never seen somebody complete every single pass. But man, Brian Daniels, he is feeling it right now. He finds Jeff Phillips down the sideline. That's a 60-yard reception as well. Sets him up again for another opportunity in the red zone. Daniels drop back. He breaks the tackle. Now he's making a run for it, and he's going to add to his rushing numbers as well. Brian Daniels coming out and making plays. He has really been a showstopper for the UCLA offense. And that's even with a guy getting a free shot at him. He went right for the middle of the offensive line. Still couldn't make the play. Could not be me, but Washington really needing to rally back right now. Down by 3 scores late in the third quarter. Now in the fourth quarter, as that was one of the last notable plays of the third. But once again, Jason Smith, he uses the legs, finds his way into the end zone yet again. Does cut it down to a 2-score game, but that defense needs to come through and help out a little bit. But, you know, that defense does not they just don't do any favors today, as Brent Childress scores for UCLA yet again. And the Bruins, they are going to bruise Washington today. This last drive could be just a formality, though, as 1 minute left. Jacob Smith just trying to make anything happen, trying to throw the ball deep downfield. But that was well covered. Really not much you could do about it. Jason Smith throws a second interception of the game. And UCLA sending a message that, hey, that college football appearance that we had in year number 1, that is no fluke. We came to compete, and we did just that here today. The Bruins win 35-14 on the road. So now we check into some more games that are happening around the country. How about number 10, Michigan? How do they respond after losing the way that they did against Oregon? That game against Oregon was a game that they really should have won, but failed to do so. They'll take on a South Alabama team that is now outside the top 25 after losing to LSU. So we'll see what Michigan can do here, knowing that as Maurice Hall just going to work against South Alabama right now. Michigan, you think they're a little bit pissed off about how the Michigan game or the Oregon game went? I think they certainly are. They are better than what their record says. That is certainly the truth there, as Michigan gets another touchdown on the ground. It's just been that type of day, and you know, not much to say here. Michigan, they dominate South Alabama 51-7. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, this game right here, this game, I'm going to tell you guys right now, this might be worthy of Sicko's committee material, because this game was so ugly. This was the ugliest game that I've watched. Not only in this season, this might have been the ugliest game that we've seen in the entire series so far. As, I mean, look at the score going into the fourth quarter, 8-9. Now, you would think to yourself, oh, Kentucky must have gotten a touchdown and went for a 2-point conversion. No, they got a safety and 2 field goals right now. It's been an absolute, it's been interesting to watch this game unfold. We'll say it like that, right? But Kentucky did have multiple chances to punch it into the end zone late, but not only is Kevin Wesley, he's going to be intercepted once, but he gets another chance a few minutes later, even gets them inside the 10-yard line. So they have another chance. Just don't turn the ball over. Kentucky can win this game, right? You have one job, and what does Kevin Wesley do? He gets intercepted again in the end zone, and Louisville takes advantage. Louisville does take advantage, and in spite of all that, Kentucky can still win with a minute 30 left, and what does Kevin Wesley do? Throw another interception. This was an ugly game. Like, the sliders that we put together are a lot healthy. It's not from the Wildcats not moving the ball. They had 450 yards of total offense, and they put up 8 points. Like, you're not winning a game like that. Louisville dodged a major bullet in the Governor's Cup. But we got our first studio updates of this episode as we check around the country in terms of games that we will not get a chance to watch on the national stage. But Boise State, they will get to 2-1 after their 19-14 win over New Mexico. And in terms of other studio updates, how about this? Louisiana Tech, the Bulldogs, they are going to strike again. Louisiana Tech beats the #1 team in the country this time, 28-23. That should get the Bulldogs ranked in the top 25, considering they beat 2 top 25 teams in a row. Not to mention the start that North Texas has had as well. They win 34-28 against UNLV. That gets them to 3-0 on the year. And then rounding out the studio updates for right now, Miami, not the Miami Hurricanes, but Miami of Ohio. They get their first win of the season, and they beat BYU to do it, who did come in ranked number 19 in the entire country, but their top 25 status is certainly in trouble. So now we check in on more games around the country. Multiple top 25 teams going in action, but first, we'll go ahead and check in on this Michigan State and Stanford game. Michigan State, a team that really did a good job rebounding after the loss to Temple to start the season. They have responded pretty well after that, but Stanford's going to give them a hard time in this game. Stanford is certainly a team that, maybe it's not the most talented team on paper. I told you, the Pac-12, and Stanford is one of those Pac-12 teams. There really is no terrible teams in the Pac-12, right? That's a crazy part in all of this. So Stanford's going to give Michigan State a hard time. They really are. But we'll see if the Spartans can put this game away as we jump into the fourth quarter. Only 13-6, a very defensive-minded matchup that we are watching unfold right before our eyes right now. But Tommy Adams almost gets it into the end zone there. He's going to be dropped down at the 1-yard line. Couldn't get that ball across the plane, but no harm, no foul though, because on the very next play, Noah Bowling's going to get the carry, and just like a parting of the Red Sea, Michigan State is going to score there. So now 20-6 is going to be your score, as Stanford's going to make it real interesting there. They settle for the extra point, but Michigan State does hang on. They win 20-13 to remain ranked in the top 25. As for Tennessee, they are coming off a pretty nice win against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They are on national television once again, this time taking on the Wildcats of Northwestern. And Northwestern, they really dropped the hammer on Louisville in conference play. So Northwestern continues those trends as they look to get their second win in conference play against this Tennessee squad. But Tennessee is going to make it real difficult for them. They're up 7-0 already. But Northwestern, they're going to remain cool, calm, and collected here at Ryan Field. They have a little bit better culture at Northwestern in the game than what they do have in real life right now. If you know, you know. I'll just put it like that. As Matt Edwards is going to tie the game here for Northwestern. But Tennessee looking to answer back right away. Tailback gets to the outside, breaks a tackle, gets it inside the 5-yard line eventually. Drew Brown provides a first down for the Tennessee Volunteers. But cutting it to 3rd and goal, though, inside the 1-yard line, trusting that ground game, and Drew Brown is going to find enough space to operate as the Tennessee Volunteers once again will have the lead. And before we go into halftime, Tennessee will
hit this 40-yard field goal attempt is good, and the Volunteers will have a 17-7 lead going into the half. Meanwhile, in that second half of action, Landrum throws over to the left-hand side. He's going to set up a little screen for Jordan Houston. And Jordan Houston using that athleticism to scurry over to the end zone. Looks like Volunteers might be pulling away in this one, but Northwestern, not a team that is going to give up, as who's supposed to guard Joe Marquardt? I have absolutely no idea, but Titus Dunbar is going to get a second passing touchdown of the game from that. Having a good performance, actually. Been efficient. Titus Dunbar is really going to have to come through and be used more often, frankly, if Northwest is going to come back and win this game. They're down by 16. Going to cut it to the running back over on the left-hand side. Breaks a tackle. Breaks the second one. And Eric Johnson almost getting the first down. But more importantly, getting out of bounds. Saving those timeouts. Those timeouts are going to be real precious, especially if they get the 2-point conversion. But I was hyping up Titus Dunbar and throws an interception that is going to seal the game for the Volunteers. Tennessee wins 30-14 as they get to 2-0, while Northwestern falls to 1-2. Meanwhile, we have the Battle of Paul Bunyan's Axe as Minnesota comes in ranked number 18 in the country after not only a shocking loss to Tulane, but a devastating loss, right? They lost big time to Tulane, who, to be fair, is now ranked at the top 25. We got to give a little credit where credit is due to Tulane. We'll see them later in this episode, but Wisconsin also coming off a loss as well. They did lose to Old Dominion in the previous episode. So someone's losing streak is going to come to an end. It's just a matter of who's also going to take home Paul Bunyan's axe, as Wisconsin looks like the more motivated team at the moment, as Wisconsin will quickly make it a 10-0 lead. But late in the first quarter, Lou Harrison gets them down inside the 10-yard line, and finally Minnesota does get on the scoreboard as they cut it to just a field goal game. And speaking of those field goals, the kicker for Wisconsin, he's doing a good job of banging them through there, able to extend the lead to a top 6 points there. And then another field goal makes it a 16-7 lead going into the halftime break. Now, as we jump into late in the third quarter, Minnesota did tighten it up a little bit, as Minnesota only down by 2. So we'll see if this Wisconsin offense can wake up a little bit now that Minnesota has closed the gap. That's what happened to them last week against Old Dominion. Wisconsin was up 14-0, but couldn't close the deal against Old Dominion. Looks like they're doing a little bit better job of trying to close this game out, as Curtis Minor, he's going to run into the end zone for the Badgers. They now have their biggest lead of the game, which is 9 points. So that just tells you how competitive this rivalry game has been for Wisconsin and Minnesota. But this will set up the biggest lead in the entire day, as Curtis Minor runs the ball into the end zone yet again. But they're choosing to go for the 2-point conversion. Interesting decision here. Bold strategy for Cotton, and it doesn't work. Dominic James gets hit before he fully releases the football. They do mark it as an incomplete pass, but opens the door a little bit for Minnesota, because that 2-point conversion would have made a free possession game. I get it, but Minnesota doesn't have to go for 2-point conversions all of the time to tie this game. They only need to do that once, but first they got to punch it into the end zone, and this run is certainly going to help them make that happen, as that's now an 8-point game. As now, 2nd and 2 coming up. Harrison hands it off up the middle for Charles Riley, and Charles Riley gets into the end zone for the Golden Gophers with 4:47 left to play. And they'll also go for the 2-point conversion. Harrison dropping back. He's going to try to run for the end zone, but it fails. So that was an interesting choice, making it going for the 2-point conversion. Now, I would have just settled for the extra point there. So it's still a 2-possession game. Even if they score here, they need to go for the onside kick now. That's just a terrible decision there by the coaching staff by Minnesota. However, Tucker Wayne does score in the back of the end zone. They get the extra point. But back to what I was just talking about, though. They got to go for the onside kick. This does not have a high success rate, and Wisconsin is going to recover the onside kick, and that means we got an upset on our hands. Wisconsin takes down Minnesota in order to keep Paul Bunyan's axe here at home. But now we get late into the night as Georgia taking on South Carolina in a key non-conference matchup. Both teams are 2-0, but South Carolina not getting as much respect as Georgia is. Georgia been in the top 25, obviously, the entire time, while South Carolina, they are not ranked still at 2-0, but if they can beat this Georgia team somehow, then that would be enough to possibly get them ranked in the top 25, if that is in the cards for them. But Georgia is no slouch. On paper, they have one of the best teams in the entire country, and that is on full display here in that first quarter of action. After that Adam Williams touchdown, Georgia will take a 10-0 lead before South Carolina does get on the scoreboard to start the second quarter. So South Carolina is still fighting, but hey, South Carolina is going to need a game of their life in order to beat this Georgia team, because Georgia is not relenting by any means. They extend this lead up to 20-6, and then in that fourth quarter, trying to run out some clock. South Carolina still using their timeouts. They're no quitters over here in South Carolina, but running the ball out of bounds, probably not what you want to do if you're trying to run some clock out. So maybe we should have done a little bit better, but they throw the ball. Wow, they really do not care about South Carolina's feelings at all. Georgia exposes South Carolina as a fraud, winning 35-13. But now we get some chance to get some more studio updates in. And how about UCF? UCF had such a terrible start to the year, and then year number 2, they completely flipped the switch. UCF wins 45-42 as they take down number 16 Army. So huge shout out to the Knights of UCF there. And then San Jose State as well. They get the 3-0 as well. They beat Utah State this time, 28-21 in this one. So good win there as well for San Jose State. But it keeps going. James Madison in a shootout with Arizona State, but the Dukes are going to prevail. 42-35 is your score over there. And then to round out your studio updates, Colorado State, they get the 3-0 as they beat San Diego State 36-30. So a bunch of games happening all around the country now. Multiple top 25 teams going, most notably LSU and Tulane going to play each other. But we'll check on some of these other games first before we get into the battle for the Tiger Rag. That is what their rivalry game is called, turns out. Appreciate you guys in the comments section when that game was played in year number 1. But Navy's going to make things real interesting here as Spencer Jackson, the FCS transfer, he's been here for a little bit now. He's from Sacramento State. He sets the school record for most career touchdown grabs. That was his 14th touchdown grab of his college career. And Navy verifying. Remember, Navy was a team that was actually ranked in the top 25 to start the season. They got embarrassed by SMU. So, you know, this Navy team is certainly motivated to prove that, you know, what happened in week number 1 against SMU was just a complete fluke. We are capable of playing with the big boys in college football. And given what we're seeing on the scoreboard right now, I'm inclined to completely agree with that assumption. You know, still a tie game at 10 apiece. USC really having a hard time finding the end zone, but Ben Scott fixes that real quick as Anthony Johnson will score. And then in the fourth quarter as well, Scott's going to drop back the pass, throws over the middle, and finds Jason Clayton into the end zone for a touchdown. So USC does survive, but, you know, Navy certainly made it interesting as the Trojans win 24-17. Meanwhile, we go across the country to see Clemson take on Oregon State. Clemson, a team that lost to an FCS squad to start the season. A little bit embarrassing for Clemson. Hopefully they can get things right here in Death Valley as they're taking on a much better Oregon State team. And it looks like Clemson is ready to step up for the occasion as Clemson does jump out to a 14-0 lead here in Death Valley. Oregon State could be in for a long day if they don't figure things out and figured it out fast. So we'll see if Oregon State can do just that, as a throw over the middle to Emmanuel Stone is going to go for a gain of 15 yards. And now looking at a 1st and goal inside the 3-yard line. Hands it off over the middle to Eric Golden, who punched it into the end zone. Touchdown, Beavers. And Oregon State gets right back into this game. But Clemson got the foot on the gas pedal, and they're going to keep that foot on the gas pedal the entire time, as they are not fazed by this Pac-12 team in Oregon State on their campus. They're going to show that what happened at an FCS game was also a fluke, as they throw to the right-hand side as they get it to Pat Glover for the 1st down, as it essentially is 1st and goal with the 1st down marker at the 1-yard line. Quarterback deciding to scramble, breaks a tackle, and Adrian Davidson is going to score. Touchdown for the Clemson Tigers, as they are running all over and clawing the Beavers of Oregon State. They are tearing down the dam here at home, but this dam is not going down without a fight. They got some hard-nosed kids up there at Oregon State, as Eric Golden does get his 2nd touchdown of the game before we got to the end of the 1st half. But chance for Oregon State to make this a game in the 4th quarter, but interceptions at a bad time. Clemson is going to win 35-21 in order to win their very first game of the season. As for Utah is ranked number 22 in the country. We see Kansas State play. I think we saw Kansas State play in the previous episode. They lost to, actually, yeah, they did lose to Boise State. Now that I think about it, we'll see what Utah can do here, starting to get that similar hype that they got in year number 1, now that they got off to a better start. A start that many people thought was going to happen in year 1. They're number 22 in the country, but I think Kansas State is a little bit tired of the slander of their football program after losing to Boise State in the previous episode, because late in the 1st quarter, TJ Young, the fullback, he's going to punch it into the end zone, and the Wildcats will take a 14-7 lead. Not only do they take the lead, they do extend the lead even further, as quarterback's going to take off, but look at this, ball is on the ground. Kansas State is going to recover. It's McCoy, the linebacker for Kansas State, that keeps the score at 21-7. So the Utes, as of right now, being kept at bay for the time being. Can Utah rally back here in this 2nd half of action? No. 1st and goal. Gonna hand it off to the fullback, and there is certainly a lot of love for the fullbacks in this particular game. 2nd time that we see a fullback score in this particular game in this episode, and I'm sure Not the Expert is somewhere out there smiling right now. Y'all know that he's fullback you for sure, and I'm sure this falls right in line to what he wants to see. But Kansas State, they still have a lead going into the 4th quarter though, and they look to try to put Utah away, as we're going to see a throw over to the right-hand side to Rich Rice, the tailback out of the backfield. That's a touchdown for Kansas State. And Kansas State really doing a great job pulling away after that. This was all Kansas State. Even if Utah scores, they need a lot of help to get back into it. I imagine they'll go for the 2-point conversion, and then they're going to need some help with the onside kick. But then look what happens on the 2-point conversion. This is something that we don't see very often at all. We're going to see this throw over to the right-hand side. It's intercepted, and then look at what happens. He's going to take this all the way back. Nobody is going to even try to touch this kid, as he's gone like a girl in a country song. That's 2 points the other way for Kansas State, and that sums up how the 2nd half went pretty well, as Kansas State wins convincingly, taking down number 22 Utah 40-20. But now we get into the battle of the Tiger Rag, and this time around, it is indeed going to be a top 25 matchup between the number 12 ranked LSU Tigers and the number 20th ranked Tulane Green Wave. And a lot of implications here, as we saw Louisiana Tech win earlier in this episode, beating Ole Miss. Both of these teams are chasing Louisiana Tech. That is not something that I thought I was going to be saying at the very beginning of this episode. I really didn't, but Hopefully that means we're going to have a very compelling game here in the battle of the Tiger Rag. LSU, I believe, dominated Tulane in this rivalry game last year. We'll see if it's a little bit closer than last time, as Damian Morton is going to start the scoring here for the LSU Tigers. That is going to make it a 7-0 lead. It's a great opening drive to begin this game. However, later in the first quarter, Tulane is looking to respond, trying to tie this game up. They're going to run it out to the right-hand side. Breaks another tackle. He's down the sideline. One man left to beat. He can't get around him. But Chris Green, with a fantastic run, sets him up with a red zone opportunity. And their quarterback, Alden Brown, he's going to keep it himself on the option play. And this game is going to get very exciting, ladies and gentlemen. We got a tie ball game here in the Bayou. And that's why this rivalry game is so important. This is not just part of Louisiana's state supremacy. This is New Orleans supremacy, right? LSU and Tulane. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain that these two teams are in the same town. They are literally in the same town. So 14-7 being your score as LSU looks to finish the first half strong as he's got a man down the sideline. It's Damian Morton once again, and he's going to score. Touchdown LSU, and the Tigers get another one up on the scoreboard. 21-7. That's a big time throw. And Damian Morton, he takes the top off the defense yet again. He's been an absolute problem here in this first half of action. Absolute problem. That being said, though, Tulane does not score their next possession, so LSU can make this an even more disgusting score, as Clay Rogers does take the sack there. But a couple plays later, it's a 3rd and 16. Rogers is going to drop back. He's going to throw over to the left-hand side, but it's going to be intercepted. It's going to be picked off, and Tulane is going to have a chance. Get this down to a 1-score game. Shout out to Seth Johnson for making a very acrobatic play. And now Tulane is on the move. Less than 30 seconds left in the first half. Brown fires to the right-hand side and finds Kenneth Arnold in the end zone. That's a touchdown for Tulane. Exactly what Tulane needed in that moment. And it's just a 1-score game all of a sudden. Tiger Rag's going to get very interesting as both teams starting to tie it up here in the 3rd quarter. Haven't seen any scoring since then, but less than 3 minutes left. Chris Norman, he's going to be found on the slant pattern from Clay Rogers as LSU scores yet again. 28-14 now being your score there. And Tulane desperately in need of a touchdown. Now down 2 scores with 5 minutes left. This is one of them. Chris Green scores for the Green Wave. And it's just a 1-possession game yet again. A game that could go to the finish. And after a stop on defense, Tulane now have a chance to tie. Brown looks over the middle. He's got a man wide but naked open. And oh my, Gerard Harper's gonna score. Touchdown, Green Wave. Oh my. How do you leave this man wide but naked open? That's just bad judgment there. 35 was, I don't know if he was trying to bait or what he was trying to do, or even if it was a zone defense. I don't know what was happening, but LSU might have gotten a little bit too much time because 30 seconds left. LSU is actually going to score with Sean Callahan. So Tulane made this game very interesting, and I think Tulane proved that they are a top 25 team, even though they did lose in this game. But LSU, they received everything that they could handle. Shout out to the Tigers. They remain resilient, and they did find a way to win. But now we go into the final game that we have planned here in this episode. Oklahoma, they go on the road. They will be taking on the Arizona Wildcats. And Oklahoma, they were on bye in week number 2 after just a shocking loss to Hawaii. They start off as a top 25 team. Meanwhile, Arizona was getting no attention whatsoever. And yet, if they can win, they could, turn some heads here a little bit. They kind of dismissed the Eastern Carolina game because East Carolina really not that great of a football team. So getting a win against them is not that impressive. But if it can beat Oklahoma, you know, that might get a little bit more attention and possibly some top 25 consideration as well. They do even have a lead against Oklahoma, but, you know, early in the second quarter, absolute bruiser at the running back for Oklahoma, Brandon Henderson. He's going to need 2 or 3 defenders to try to take him down every single time, it seems like, and it sets him up with a 4th down. Actually, they really stalled out after that, but big time throw to Joel Haynes after that. Kicker does miss the extra point though, so it's 9-6. A little bit weird to see this kind of score, even though both teams have actually scored touchdowns. And speaking of touchdowns, Kenyon Rollins is going to get another one here, and the Arizona Wildcats, this time actually successful with the extra point. They will go ahead and make this a 4-point lead for them. Oklahoma still has a chance to go down the field, get some points before we get to the end of this first half. We'll see what Oklahoma can do as they try to run downfield inside the 30-yard line, running down the sideline, but he puts the ball on the ground. Yo. Oh no, Oklahoma on upset alert, question mark? I think that might be in the cards, especially on what the Wildcats can do with 50 seconds left. Looking over to the left-hand side, gets it out to Jason Davidson quickly. He gets out of bounds and saves those timeouts as well. But a long way to go before they can even start considering getting some points. But if they are going to score on this drive, you need a play like this where you just get a big chunk play down the field. And now Arizona really in business now. 10 seconds left, so this could be one of the last plays that we see in the first half. And Kenyon Rollins finds a receiver who breaks the top of the defense, and Ryan Little, he's going to help Arizona carry a 20-9 lead into the second half. Oklahoma certainly in some trouble now, but them Sooners are going to try and remain calm as Brandon Henderson, he'll pick up the first down. That's his first catch of the day. We'll see if they call his number again on this first down attempt. No, it's the quarterback instead who throws over the middle. A receiver choosing not to give up as Jermaine Smith desperately fighting for extra yards, and I think it pays off because Jermaine Smith does pick up the first down for the Sooners. And now looking to go over on the right-hand side. There it is. Henderson gets his first touchdown of the day. We'll see if they go for the 2-point conversion as well, which they actually don't. They just sell for the extra point. I would have not been surprised if they went for the 2-point conversion here, but you know what? Going to put some trust in their defense. And, you know, in the second half, Oklahoma's defense has shut down the Arizona Wildcats, but they might be without Henderson for the rest of the game, though. He gets injured. Don't know the extent of the injury. Hopefully it is not too serious. But Mike Nolan, well, he'll get a 11-yard catch over middle of the field, and with a chance to take their first lead of the game, it seems like. Leon Jackson, the backup tailback, is actually going to punch it in. Oklahoma does take the lead. They're going to extend this lead. They had a chance to actually put this game away. And, you know, while the kicks have not been pretty, Oklahoma does just enough to win this game against Arizona, handing the Wildcats their first loss of the season. 26-20 is your final score.
But even outside of the nationally televised games, we still had some pretty intriguing scores going down around the country. Penn State, for example, they took on the Ball State Cardinals, and while it wasn't the most impressive win in the world, only winning 26-3, the Nittany Lions do get the 3-0 in order to move up into the top 15 in the national polls. As for the Maryland Terrapins, they actually blow out SMU, and SMU was a team that beat a Navy squad that was ranked at some point. SMU suffers their first loss of the season, losing 48-17 to that Maryland team that wins their first game of the season. Now, the Rice Owls do beat Indiana 23-21 in what was a close game, but apparently Rice has done enough to impress the pollsters. They get into the top 25 after their 2-0 start, and frankly, the strong end of the season that they had back in year number 1. North Carolina continues to climb back up the top 25 polls as they beat Mid-Tennessee State 21-14. Ever since losing to Colorado State in week number 1, the Tar Heels are on a 2-game winning streak. Meanwhile, Iowa was not as fortunate as they will actually fall out of the top 25 as they lose to Boston College 28-16. The Eagles do win their very first game of the season. As for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, they now get to 3-0 after they beat FCS Southeast pretty convincingly by a final score of 42-14. Nebraska now officially in the top 5. Arkansas will also handle its business against the Memphis Tigers as Arkansas does win 45-24. The Arkansas Razorbacks now are at number 18 in the country, while Memphis still searches for their first win of the year. Syracuse, meanwhile, a team that was in the college football playoff this year, they look to get back here in year number 2, but they had a close game against the Toledo Rockets, 17-10 being your score in this one. The Orange, while undefeated, they've certainly had their concerns in this early going in the season, while Toledo still searches for their first win as well. Oregon will also have no problem taking down a winless Ohio Bobcats team. Oregon now number 4 in the country after a 35-16 win. Ohio is still also searching for that first win of the season. But how about the Nevada Wolfpack? After they had a tough loss to start the season, they get their first win in a massive way, absolutely destroying the Virginia Cavaliers 41-3. Nevada might be a dark horse team to possibly make some noise in the Pac-12 conference if they can stay healthy. So it's been a crazy week once again. Game in which we do have a new number 1 team in the country, and that is the UCLA Bruins, but that number 2 team is just across the street. Number 1 and number 2 both occupy Los Angeles. Meanwhile, other notable things I wanted to see in the top 25 poll is that Nebraska, Miami, and Ohio State, they all move up a couple of spots. Ohio State doing so even though they were on bye this week. Georgia moves up 3 spots to number 8 in the country. Ole Miss, a team that was ranked number 1, well, after a shocking loss to Louisiana Tech, well, they're no longer the number 1 team in the nation. They're down here at number 10 in the entire country. Other notable movements include the Washington Huskies. After their first loss of the season, UCLA, they're down to number 12, and it doesn't get any easier as they gotta go play against USC in the next episode. So another top 25 matchup coming up for them. However, Louisiana Tech, a team that was unranked, well, they move all the way up to number 16. Well deserved after beating Ole Miss, who was ranked, and then also Arkansas, who is still ranked in the top 25 as well. This is a much deserved ranking for the Bulldogs. As for the rest of the top 25, we got Michigan State. Even though they weren't great against Stanford, they do move up 4 spots to number 17. Arkansas moves 6 spots as they recover from that loss to Louisiana Tech. Auburn is back in the top 25 after a convincing win over Mississippi State. They kicked them out of the top 25. And rounding out your top 25 is North Carolina at number 20. Tulane, who only moves down 1. Army, who's still in despite the loss to UCF. Minnesota, who also had a close loss to Wisconsin. And then also back in the polls as well is Alabama. And we also have the Rice Owls that are in here as well. So that will wrap things up here in today's episode of the NCSL Dynasty. I hope you enjoyed it because we had a lot of great action. We were definitely seeing some more scoring than what we did in season number 1, which is something that I truly love to see. You love to see it too. Just offense is always more exciting to watch, and it rewards good defense as well. It's not as easy on the defense to, keep them off the field. So whenever you do see a low-scoring game, the defenses are truly playing well. So it's been great, man. It has been fun to see. But hope you enjoyed this episode, though. If you did, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel as well. This is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.